Here we have a table. The table has to do with particular diagrams that are constructed by making use of wires and balls. The first column tells us the number diagram. For example, diagram 1, diagram 2, 3, and so on. The second column tells us the number of wires that are used in constructing a particular diagram. And of course, the third row tells us the number of balls that are in a particular diagram. Let us complete the table, taking it row by row. Row 4 should not be difficult because we already have diagram 4. There is diagram 4. All we need to do to complete row 4 is count the number of wires and count the number of balls, which we do not have time for in this audiovisual, but we just understand that all we need is the number of wires and the number of balls, and we have those numbers, so we will insert them in their respective places. Here we go. 36 wires and 20 balls are in this diagram. What about diagram 20? Taking a more systematic approach will be more beneficial in the long run. And what is that systematic approach? We have the frame to be added to each successive diagram with 8 wires and 4 balls. To each successive diagram, we need to add 8 wires and 4 balls. So we will begin with the first diagram, and we need to add 8 wires. So we say begin with the first diagram, add 8 wires, that's 20. Add 4 balls, that's 12. So that is very easy to see. If we know that each successive diagram will go up by 8 wires and 4 balls. Add 8 to the number of wires in the third row and 4 to the number of balls in the third row. Instead of counting them, we could take note of the fact that we have right here row 3. We need to add 8 wires to this, which will give us 36, and we need to add 4 balls to this, which will give us 20. We may do that instead of counting all the time, and that is going to be more beneficial in the long run if we take that systematic approach, because the diagram, as a matter of fact, for example, this one is diagram 20, and it might take us the entire day to count all of the wires and balls. We have the frame to be added to each successive diagram with 8 wires and 4 balls. To each successive diagram, we need to add 8 wires and 4 balls. Add 8 to the number of wires in the third row, which we have done, but we are just going to show that again, and 4 to the number of balls in the third row. Notice that we have 28 wires in the third. We will add 8 to that, and the result is 36. And 16 balls in the third row. Add 4 to that, and the result is 20. The 36 will take its place right there, and the 20 right there. So if we are taking a more systematic approach, it will prove to be more beneficial in the long run, because in the long run, we'll have all the way up to diagram 20. We may draw, because this is row 20, and we are talking about diagram 20, and we need the number of wires and balls. We may draw diagram 20 and count the number of wires and balls, consuming the rest of the examination time, or we may take a more common sense approach. we have two options. Construct diagram 20 and count all of the wires and bars. Or we may approach this in a more common sense manner. By the numbers that we have from the frame, 8 wires and 4 bars will be added to each successive diagram. And we have the frame right there. How do we form diagram 20? Begin with diagram 1 and add the frame to it 19 times. That is how we will get diagram 20. We do not start with diagram 1 and add the frame 20 times. We start at diagram 1 and add the frame 19 times, and the result will be diagram 20. Therefore, 8 wires will be added 19 times and 4 bars will be added 19 times. The 12 wires of diagram 1 add 19 times the number of wires, which is 8. The 8 bars of diagram 1 add 19 times the number of bars in the frame, because the frame is going to be added each time. Realize that the frame is not added to the first diagram. So the first frame will be added to diagram 2, and that is why to the 20th diagram we do not add 20 frames but 19 frames. 164 and 84. Candidates should always pay special attention to detail. However, there should have been an indication of discontinuity in the table after the 4th row. This would serve as an indicator that the 5th row is not the very next one in sequence. Right, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we jump all the way to 20. Some candidate might not be focusing on the 20 and complete the 2 rows for diagram 5 instead of diagram 20. But students should be ready to pay attention to detail and realize that it is not the 5th diagram that is represented in the 5th row, but the 20th diagram. If that bit of detail is missing from the student's perspective of the problem, then the student will run into trouble. The greatest of which is that the 5th row will not be correctly completed. For access to hundreds of free videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Richard James Mathematics Resources. For unlimited access to thousands of exclusive full-length videos, please subscribe to our Vimeo channel, Richard James Mathematics Resources.